Okay. Kuftes and 130. What did you say? 130. 131. Okay. Shabbos Kodesh ha'aros choshchos ha'olam hazeh. Piskat ha'or v'kedusha shel Shabbos hi tfilas hamincha shel Shabbos. So the light and the sanctity of Shabbos is really found in the prayer of Mincha of Shabbos. So ishas Rava deravin. There's an Aramaic phrase called Rava deravin, which we refer to Shal Shudas as well. Ulam hachnisa b'sharei kedushas Shabbos nas mitoch hadlakas haner. So on the one hand, we have Rava deravin. I don't know how they translate that, but Rava is.
Because he says the light is like and it peaks in Shabbos afternoon.
But it's the holiest time. The holiest time. However, right? Oh, we don't have that over there. But the holiest time. But we have the time in which you enter Shabbos. It really happens when you light the candle. Remember, we spoke about this beforehand. What do you do when you light the candle? So, as Shabbos enters, we ignite the light. Remember the idea: the room is dark, and suddenly you light the candle, and you see in front of you something. So all of a sudden, you have clarity. Shabbos ain't in a yom because Chol was that time that we're blinded. Chol is the time that we don't see reality, that we're living in a false reality, and then the lights go on, and all of a sudden we see with clarity what was really going on all along. So Shabbos is not in a yom shel mesirus nefesh. Yom shebo poel hasechol yashar. It's not a day of mesirus nefesh. Oh, I can't work today, so I really have to rely upon my emunah, my faith in God, that He's going to pull me through this day. That's not what it is. Rather, it's the day in which we have clarity. In other words, during the week, we thought that what was holding me up was how hard I work or how smart I am or how lucky I am, all this stuff. But then on Shabbos, when the lights go on, all of a sudden we realize what was it that was pulling you across, pulling you through the week. Altogether, it was Hashem. So your perspective on yourself and your surroundings and your world suddenly shifts. The existence of Shabbos is that moment of light. Lo Yosem Mizad, the speaker who spoke this past Shabbos, he actually had a very funny Malava Malka talk where he was telling a lengthy story of a delay that he had getting to the airport and all these things that happened. And then in the end, you see like all the delays and all the annoying things that happened along the way. He shows, it was the Yad Hashem weaving through. He's quite a storyteller. So, but the idea is that Shabbos, you arrive, you realize, wait a minute, all those little missteps during the week that Hashem was steering me the whole time. That's supposed to be the ha'ara, the recognition of the light going on. It's a moment of light. Not more. You see the truth. And when I was in my crazy state, when I was in my insanity, when I was working so hard, and I thought, that was holding things together. Torah mashkefet emes. Shabbos, someone's hitting the bass drum. There's a music room down there. Someone's hitting the bass drum. Yeah. No, there's a music room down there. So, right. I don't know. I read my office things. I have this over here. I don't know. Well, we go home and look. I don't know. There's a smell in it. I can't figure it out. I have to get the bathroom doesn't smell. I do in my office, but that's not where the smell's coming. It's coming from the other corner. Huh?
Usually, if there's a bathroom, you may not smell it in the bathroom, but it's,
no, it's specifically the other corner of the room. Yeah.
What's underneath?
Well, there is a whatever. We'll figure out. Okay, so Shabbos, so Regash, or moment of clarity. Shiyatzla avoda ibe'etzem shigaon she'en kamo. Torah meshkefet et ha'emet shel Shabbos. So in other words, through the Lamates Malachos, we have specifically that perspective of truth. Okay, so that's what we have to try to understand. Also, emes, that truth. Mizgali de Shabbos mechiyeves It's not just that the light turns on and we suddenly have clarity, but that through the halachic observances that are required of us on Shabbos, we see we have a unique perspective of this truth. Shabbos Kodesh yeshno isser miyuchad. You have another isser on Shabbos, which is called daber davar. It's based on the pasuk in Nach. So the daber davar is don't talk about things that are not Shabbosnik. Shelo yehu diboracha shel Shabbos ki diboracha shel chol. That your words on Shabbos should not be the words that you speak during the week. The way we conduct ourselves in conversation. The Yerushalmi actually tells us about a story about Hashem Bar Yochai. She'imo hazekeno haisam medaberes harbe b'Shabbos ksheheir lo ki Shabbos hayom yadi shaska. One Shabbos she was speaking about a number of things, and then when she realized it was Shabbos, she was quiet. In other words, she recognized that the speech that is required of Shabbos is a different one. Iser nosaf miyuchad l'Shabbos Kodesh uva v'shulchan aruch. The iser that is knowing on Shabbos. Okay, so we were talking about how this another instrument is playing now. Shabbos Kodesh yeshno iser miuchad daber davar. We have an iser of speaking about things that are not Shabbostic. Iser nosav miuchad is another unique iser for Shabbos, which is brought in the Shulchan Aruch. Shtarei hediotos, hainu shtarei chovos cheshbonos veigros shel shila shalom aser lekrosim. You can't read documents, whether it's court documents, whether it's letters that are written shalom aleichem from one person to the other. You're not supposed to be reading those greetings on Shabbos. Aser lekrosim. Afil ayin behem below kriya, even to look at it without reading it is aser. Yadua ki be'isur zeh nichlat kriyat iton, including that might be even reading news in a newspaper. This is according to many of the Achronim, that reading a newspaper would be a problem on Shabbos. Where does this come from? Where is this idea that I can't read letters, that I can't read regular things? Yanim shel isurim elu pashut. It's a very simple idea. Yehudi shemonyein likro chadashot politica. If you're reading politics, would you ever do that in a Beit Midrash? Obviously not. I don't think that's true anymore. But yeah, machar beis hamedrash beis Hashem. Once you know it's a house of Hashem, everyone knows that you go to a beis medrash, you're not reading these sorts of things. But somebody grow iton hu yotze achutza. If you wanted to read, you would go outside. Sham liad kiosk hu kor iton, and next to the kiosk you read the news. Fine. So what does that mean? It means that when you're holding in a beis medrash, you're not going to read things that are the daber davar. That's the nature of the iser. Shadam nimsa bemsa tefillah shmon esrei. Yizachen she'amod v'yikra iton o yidaber politika. In the middle of your shmon esrei, you're going to start talking politics. Chalila b'chas, not at all. Take your 3 steps back. Say shalom. As if you separate yourself from God. Shalom. Goodbye, God. I'm no longer in your world. I can talk about my world. That's the idea. The idea is a mindset that you're not in the same world that you were in earlier. That's in the weekday. Shabbos Kodesh. Our eyes are opened up, become sort of revealed, clever. Let's say pikeach. We start to see with clarity. I never left God's realm when I took 3 steps back. I never left Hashem. On Shabbos, we realized we were there all along. It didn't begin and end when I opened the door of the base medrash and when I left. What is a base medrash? It's the house of God. I'm already in the house of God. So we see that the mentality on Shabbos that we're next to God all along is the one that actually curtails what we speak about, what we read, how we engage in conversations. And that's why it's not that, are you machmir? Do you read newspapers or not? It's not about whether or not you're allowed to read human interest stories and they elevate you. The question of what's mutter, what's usher is a separate issue, right? And the overall idea that there is an isser of a deber davar, that everyone agrees there is a concept of curtailing what you speak and read about on Shabbos, to some extent, means that there has to be an awareness that you've entered the Beis Hashem. And that's, I think, the point here. Ha'isser likro iton. Where does this come from? Deber dvarim b'telim Shabbos, to speak about nonsense in Shabbos. It's not because Shabbos is holy. Rather, Shabbos is yom shel seichel, yom shel yashrut, yom shel nifkachot bo'inayim. You don't have to engage in things that are false. It's interesting because there are those poskim who say, so to read something about science, to read something about math or something about the beauty of Hashem's world, that if you enjoy it, it's not falsehood anymore. It'd be 100% fine, right? Those things are okay on Shabbos. It's about engaging in things that are sheker. So getting to a political debate probably be across the board usher on Shabbos bichlal, because it's sheker, meaning has falsehood to it, not helpful. And again, engaging in higher level conversation that hopefully taps into truth would be in the spirit of Shabbos. When you light the candles, miachalim aleno kol hilchos Shabbos. Gizel rega shel or. It's a moment of illumination. That's the imagery of the lighting the candle. As we mentioned earlier, there are things in Shabbos that are beyond man's grasp, things that are beyond the intellectual grasp. All it does is allow us to see who's sustaining us, who's keeping us alive, who's connecting us. Oh, az mevin ha'adam she'im hu omed lifnei. So, or you understand at least that you're standing before God. L'shema alav lavod bichlal. What is the purpose? What is my agenda to work? What's my avoda? Because the work that I was doing beforehand, ultimately that was for Hevle Olam Hazeh, the ephemeral, short-lasting nature of this world. And through the light, I realized that those are things that I can't. How could you engage in that right now when it's such a mundane activity? Imagine like you're playing a video game, right? And then all of a sudden you realize that something very important happens and you have to leave the video game. So you have to leave the thing that was nonsense. You recognize, everyone realizes this is recreation. This was not real. It wasn't the real world. You peel yourself away from it because there's something more important happening. So Shabbos is the idea of peeling yourself away from the forms of work that were involved with this world, with the world that was sort of short lasting and not forever. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a footnote here, and it says the moment we light Shabbos candle, all the halachos Shabbos apply to us.
Right.
And then it says in the footnote, according to halacha, this applies only to women.
Okay, so
They don't accept it
until they come home.
till the end of the
Yeah.
18 minutes where Shkia arrives. And that's so you have time to make last minute preparations. But as a technicality, whoever's lighting candles, unless you stipulate otherwise, when you do light candles, what you're doing is you're accepting Shabbos. Why? And what he's dealing with is an interesting question. Halacha. Why should Shabbos begin with lighting candles? If Shabbos doesn't begin, isn't the Kedusha Shabbos declared by Hashem? And therefore it's talui, it's dependent upon a zman, a special time that has to arrive before the time it's not Shabbos, after the time it is Shabbos. So what is me lighting candles have anything to do with the Kedusha Shabbos?
We can make it earlier. We can add on to Shabbos.
And what he's explaining is the mechanism behind that is, at least the messaging is that all of a sudden my eyes are open to reality. And therefore I'm not allowed to engage in the things that are not matters of Kedusha. Lamites malachos, which are of this world, or mundane things to speak about, or whatever activities that are not Shabbos day. They suddenly become prohibited because I'm living in a world that is no longer in denial. It's in truth now. I lit the light. I turned the lights on in the dark room. So he's saying that's the reason why that the moment of the Isser begins at Halakas Ner and not some other place, right? Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. Like I could just light a candle now and say, okay, I'm in reality. But right.
Speaking of what you speak about, like if you're at your Shabbos table and somebody brings up some, you have to cut them off and say that.
I mean, you still tell them Elohim isn't that person. You have to be graceful how you change your topic. Someone starts speaking Lashon Hara at your table, you have to figure out how you're gonna. You smile. Rabbi Schwartz had a lot of thing to him. He was able to. I remember he had the ability to sort of tell someone, "No, this is not a topic we're going to talk about," in a way that was smile, warmth. You knew he loved you, knew he cared about you, but you also got the message that it was time to shift the conversation. If you have that ability, it's great because then you don't have to destroy a person in the process of rebuking them, which is great. You don't want to criticize a person openly so they're embarrassed. That's a problem. It's a way to silently shift conversation or cleverly shift the conversation. You could do that.
Challenge of Shabbos, yes.
And basically, it sounds like everything is off the table except for each other. Like, should we talk about a trip that you're gonna take?
In
a
an
trip that
optimal
you'll take?
way, well, I don't know, trip is appreciating God's world. There's some beautiful things to see there. You talk about history. History is interesting. History has a Torah message to it. I don't know. There's a lot you could talk about. Yeah, you can. Right. When politics is old politics, it becomes history, and that's understanding God's world. Right. Someone's told me that they study. It was Zev Aleph. He studies contemporary American Jewish history. So he says his field is like Lashon Hara because he's studying what's going on right now. So what's the difference between the historian studying something from 1,000 years ago versus now? One is telling you about people who are alive. So it's always tricky when they're alive. Anyway, Tfisa Pshuta, Shem Adut. Yichud Hashem, the oneness of God, Perusha Shu Yisbarach Yachid Be'olam Bein Ol Milvado. God is one in this world, and there is none other than Hashem. B'mosag Ein Od Milvado Yeshan Shlosh Tfisos Sha'achas Amuka Mechaverdo. There's three aspects to Ein Od Milvado, and each one is deeper than the next, and we're gonna explore what they are. Number one. Klamar, Metziut ha'olam nirit le'inenu hi shemishu bal kishron v'hu gam oved kasha yomam v'layla. Someone who has puts a lot of work into their lives. They work day and night very hard. Upamim af mishaker ksas ksarach. Sometimes they lie a little bit when they have to. And they cut corners. Nase ashir gadol uval nechasim, and they become very wealthy. Accumulate a lot of property. V'ha shlomazol. And the one who has poor luck, Kaser Kisharon, Shlamazel, the Nebuch, they don't put in the necessary effort. And Tzayim Nishar Tamid b'Matzavo Aluv, they stay always in a bad situation. Basar Anya Azla Aniyasa, after poverty comes impoverishness, being impoverished. Meaning if you it continues and continues to develop. So it's like the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. There's two different realities of people who are successful and people who are not successful. God forbid your child doesn't feel well, you're going to go to the doctor. Maybe you'll wait a long time online. Ma yaselo. Well, imata pikech umela ashir tozio mikischa skum kesef hagon avor bikur etzerofem umcha v'yeh b'chatov. He's talking about a medicine system that doesn't necessarily exist here, but in Israel, you either go to Kupat Chulim, where all the other nebuchs, and you wait for 2 hours for the doctor, or you spend your own money and you go to the doctor on your own. You just give the money and they let you right in. Those are the two models, I guess, in Israel. And by the way, people have the general insurance, which is very cheap, and then people have sort of an extra insurance in Israel. So when they need it, they can cut the line, or they don't get a line because they pay for that. They're paying for an extra level of insurance. There are merits to say both ways. It's a good thing, it's a bad thing. You can argue that at least the country provides a basic level of care for everyone, and then people have more money, they can provide more. You could argue that, I don't know, why should money determine anyone's medical care? Not for the time being, not for a discussion for now, but Zuhi Hametzios Sha'olam Menikret Olam HaSheker. But this is really falsehood. Olam Shal it's really a world of darkness. Achaemes Sha'olam Hi Shakol Sheker Chuzav. Yesh Olam Manhig, Balvais, the world has Bal Habayis, it's Hashem, he's the Adon HaKol, Meno Magil Adam Kol Nitzrachlo, and everyone comes to God, whatever we need from him. Riut, health, parnasa, money. Ein Adam Nogeb, Muchan L'Chabero, Afilu Malinim. And nobody takes away from what is Magia to their friend. Nobody, in other words, what someone else has doesn't affect me. So someone has more money or less money or more opportunities or greater intellect, it shouldn't affect me at all. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Mefarnes HaKol, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Borei, he's the Rofei L'Kol. So if that's the case, then there's no paying for a special heightened level of insurance coverage. It doesn't exist with God. Kol bardas mevin kiloni timli lachem manhiga olam ishmo kol. So it doesn't matter how hard you try in the world of truth, right? In other words, the world of sheker, so it's how pushy you are, how clever you are, what which insurances you've purchased, which jobs or schools you went to. All that is very important in our world. This is not important in God's world, right? We're talking about who gets away with speeding, right? That doesn't matter in Hashem's world at all. Zuhat fisa pshuta, that's the obvious fisa. Hashlav harishon ba'avanas hamusag ein od milvado. There is nothing other than God. The other day, someone was telling me, it was someone asked me a shaila, and there was something I couldn't give a heter for. It was not whatever it was. So they said to me, maybe Rabbi, you'll close one eye. He said to me. I said, right there, I'm like, it doesn't work like that. And I said, I only see out of one eye anyway, so don't worry. If I close the other eye, I'm finished. But the point is that we believe. Why would someone say that? Because in this world, we believe that if you push a little bit, if you cut some corners here, really you get exactly what you want. Put enough pressure. You ask a shaila, but you put enough pressure, we'll get the heter you want. You get the thing you want, which is crazy. Which is why the Rambam said originally the rabbi shouldn't be paid, because it doesn't make any sense.
And that's why the
people go shop.
Yeah,
They
they
have
go
a
to
shop.
where they know that.
I'm so sorry, what are the names, what is it with 70, like,
Sanhedrin.
thank you so much. That's
Say
why
it
the
again, I didn't hear
Sanhedrin,
it.
The Sanhedrin.
Oh,
the
okay.
Sanhedrin had to all be wealthy. Isn't that correct, Eva?
Right, you can't be bribed.
So that they could,
I don't know.
No,
Right, no matter how wealthy you are.
but if you're very rich, then.
Well, if you think about it, I mean,
You love
if you
like
think about it, the people who were teaching originally, the original model was the Kohanim and maybe Levium. And the Kohanim didn't have property, and they were fully supported by the gifts, the 24 Manos Kahuna. The reason for that structure was it had to be you had to be completely separate from anyone. Nobody could say, "Well, I made you rich," or "I supported you," and if you give me the right answer or the right time, we don't need that in the realm of kedusha. It's a very dangerous thing. So if we really understood that wealth and health and success all comes from God, so the notion that I'm going to pay for a special insurance and I'm going to cut a line, it doesn't exist, right? The question is, to what extent is our society responsible to mimic that, to try to recreate that, and to what extent are we just saying no? Our world is totally not like Hashem's world, and it's a tough thing to say, and therefore, and how does it work practically? I don't know the answer, because practically you do have to live in a world where people don't all believe in that same level of emunah, and you have to pay for things, you have to have supplies, you have to have people trained. So there is a limit.
That's what we were talking before, like the Hishtadlut versus.
Yeah, so it's really hard to know how it plays out practically. But he's saying on a theoretical level, God's in charge of everything, and there is no arguing that I have certain abilities. If I fight a little harder, if I try a little more, right, maybe I'll get that. It's a Seinfeld joke when you see someone in first class and they close the curtain, right? Well, maybe if you worked a little harder, right, maybe you would have been here. Yeah. I never get jealous when I see someone there. I'll tell you why. First of all, you have to understand. Maybe on an international flight, I get jealous. You have to understand that Hashem knew that for me to get exactly what I need, He gave me exactly what I have. So Hashem knows perfectly exactly what I need to be successful. And evidently, there are certain people who need more in order to fulfill the Ratzon Hashem. But I need exactly what I have to be my type of Eved Hashem. That's the number one. Number two is you never know what's really going on. So some guy or some man or woman, they get flown in by their company. They have like thousands of employees. And this person is flown in specially. They get a 3-hour flight and they sit in the business class and they're feeling really good. Then they arrive at their station and they get berated by a boss wherever they arrive. So for like 2 hours of their life, they actually feel like a chashav individual, and then destroyed afterwards. Right. So maybe that's exactly, you don't know the cheshbon. So you don't have to, you don't have to try to fight and push harder that I'm going to, there's no reason not to be comfortable if you have those abilities. But I'm just saying is the perspective on what HaKadosh Baruch Hu dishes out to people. It's all has to be from this perspective of Gemara Yoma, that everyone understands that God is the Manhig HaOlam. Yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, but that's exactly what I was gonna say, is that, these are two different realms, and I think, I'm gonna say, I believe that Hashem wants to connect at that level, but the fact is that you have to also do your due diligence here with Shabbos
Right.
and do what you need to do. And
Yeah.
but maybe everything that happened ultimately turns out for the best, or it's part of that grander plan. But we as human beings can't see the grander plan. So
the question is, how do we react? Do we get sad when we don't, when it doesn't work our way? Do we say, well, maybe we need to cut corners? It's the reaction to that. You know, we're so obsessed with equity in our world, because tied into our notion of equity is the idea of everyone's created b'tselem Elokim, everyone's in the image of God, which is true. But we're so obsessed with it that when God doesn't distribute evenly to us, we take it out on Hashem. We realize that He gave me exactly what I need to move forward. Also, so there's a balance, right? And it's not always clear when whether I'm supposed to try more or not. And I don't know what my level, my threshold of ishtadlus and bitachon is.
You should never ask for a raise, because.
Well, I don't know. Maybe if I
you're
said,
bad.
maybe if I believe, okay, look, I've worked a certain amount of time. I need more for my family, and I'm only gonna need a raise if I ask for. I'm only gonna get a raise if I ask for. Maybe I have to. For me, someone who maybe I personally hesitate with asking for my own needs, right? So maybe part of my avodas Hashem is to become a little bolder, to be a little more confident, and to know my self-worth, and to say, okay, I need more. And for some people who maybe they're too confident and they're too arrogant about their own position, maybe their avodas Hashem is to say, I have enough. I don't need a fourth car. I don't need a 3-car garage. I don't need all these things. For some people, it's that perspective is, wait a minute, tone it down a little bit. You have to know what your avodas Hashem is in the moment. Someone has, you have 10 kids at home and you've never asked for a raise, and you're earning minimum wage and you can't support the family and they can't eat. Part of your avodas Hashem is the ishtadlus. So you have to believe in yourself. You have to ask a little more. You have to push a little more. So I don't know where that is. That's the harder part. The practical part is much harder. But the theoretical part is that Hashem's in charge of the world, and we have to understand it. And in the end, all of this stuff that we're doing is in the darkness, and it's all pushing for no reason. Hashem is going to make it work. That's the balance. Okay, so Tfisas Hamoka Yoser Me'ein Old Nevrado. There's a deep understanding. She'etz Mesias Olam also Roim Anaveinu Shekadosh Baruch Hu Mechayeu Kol Rega V'Rega. This is the second part. God is, number one, He is the Adon of everything. He's the master of it. Number two is Bal Kochot Kulam. All strength. Ein Od Milvado means everything belongs. He has every ability in the world. Tamachayit Kulam brings everyone life. God forbid a person's sick and they can't breathe. And they're using a machine to allow them to breathe. It's pumping air into their oxygen into their lungs. That what is it doing? It's constantly giving them life. God is the one being Mekayim you. Klomar, gam lefi ha'avana zu yeshno olam, al sha'agdara amitit l'metziut ha'olam, yishkadosh baruch hu machnis bo chiyuto tmidi. That there is a world, but that world is constantly being empowered by God. Nimsa lefi tfisa zu she'et etzem metziut ha'olam ha'kadosh baruch hu mekayim shem ha'kadosh baruch hu mevatei emet zo, hu shem havai elokim shepirusho ha'kadosh baruch hu bal ha'ichot bal kochot plum. So number one is God is the Adon over everything. God's the real boss. Number two is God is constantly the mechayei. God is making everything function. The machine is constantly working because of a consistent influence on that world. Yes, it's true. The Medrash says that in the beginning of time, the Yam Suf was created, that it would split exactly at that moment. But it's also, the Mefarshim say that God also willed the Yam Suf to open. And at the moment the Yam Suf, that will stops, the Yam Suf comes crashing down and functions the Derech Teva again. So it's not a clockmaker's universe where he wound it up and sort of abandoned it, but rather there's a constant act of breath of life going into those lungs. And lastly, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Metziut Ha'olam, the existence of the world. Hatfisa Shlishit Hamuka Bioter, the deepest part is be Etzem Lo Kayim Klal Olam Ela Yichud Hashem Tov Kol Bria Kulo. That nothing really exists other than through God's will. It's not that just that it's happening, and that He can do it. He can do it all. Right? He could split the sea, he can make the sea function normally, but that it doesn't exist without the Ratzon Hashem. So there's two perspectives. One is God made a tree, from which we make a table, was a plastic table, but he made made the petroleum, which they melted down and they turned into a plastic table, right? But the idea that this table even exists is a continuous byproduct of Hashem's will. So that if Hashem for a single moment stopped willing this table to exist, the things would fall to the ground. And that's the Bala Metzius. It's not just that he can make air pump into my lungs and I can breathe. That my cardiovascular system is functioning and that blood is pumped around my brain into my heart into parts of my body that they function properly, and that nutrients and bad things are pumped out of the system, that all these systems work properly. That's true. Hashem created an amazing world. But that if Hashem willed it for a single second, it would cease to exist as if it never existed. That's the higher level. Nefesh HaChaim writes, and he writes a warning in his book. Nefesh HaChaim, Reb Chaim Volozhiner. Imratz libcha shuv limakom. Shelakach nemar v'chayot ratzo v'shov. That if your heart was to suddenly run to one place, Perush kishitachshov belibcha al borei olam mahu ve'ich haniyaso b'chol makom ma'aseh. If you start to think about where is God and how is God residing in everything. Right? Blum picha meledaber libcha melaharer. Asara machshava melibecha. How can God be everywhere? You start to think, how could it be? It's not possible that God is the kol yachol. You have to remove that thought from your heart. The imratz libcha lemachshava zos poshe umaher v'altar v'shuv liyichud mekomo she'olam lavoto lirato. Adavar zen nichrad brit. So he says, not healthy to think too much like a philosopher about God. It's actually very dangerous. That's the Nefesh HaChaim's idea. So we think about Hashem's ability and endless ability and the Kol Yachol, but if you start to think about God's existence, like things like, well, where did God come from, and where is really, and you start to delve into this too much, it's actually a dangerous machshava. I don't know how he frames it in this. But there are certain thoughts that you can't know, right? Page around in English?
Okay.
Yeah, I thought maybe we were at 136, but I'm not sure where we are because it seems like he's saying some of the stuff in Hebrew and in the English and some not, so I'm getting lost.
Yeah.
Here, it's on the top of 136. It says, the existence of the world is not an independent reality. It's nothing more than expression of divine will, and therefore there is no existence or reality other than Hashem. This is the true meaning of Eino Levado. This concept is very deep, and Sefer Nefesh HaChaim states that we cannot properly understand the idea and not allowed to speak about it in length. That's what we're talking about right here. That there are certain concepts that would be too difficult for us to comprehend, and actually they can lead us down a dangerous path of heresy. And since understanding God is so difficult, yeah.
Last line in the last paragraph. So when did we make a contract to not think about Hashem? About his.
I have to look in the Nefesh HaChaim and see the footnotes there. I don't know. I'd have to. We can pick up a Nefesh HaChaim in a minute after the share. We'll look.
It
I have
says
one.
where it's from.
Right, I have the source. I would have to look it up. Shar Gimel Perek Vav. Yeah, 136. So once the grasp of Hashem is so difficult, the name of God, Shem HaKodesh, Hamevate Inyan Zehu Hashem, Hovaya and Eker. So the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei, and the name of that Hashem presents to Moshe, Shinyano Atid Ani Lidgalot Latid Lavo. It's all about Hashem was, is, and will be, and then that truth will be revealed in the future. Yavo Yom V'Tavinu Kol. One day will come, and you'll understand it all. But now you don't get to know everything. Just that the truth is that Hashem is Kol Yachol. Hashem is everywhere. Hashem always was and always will be. But that idea might be a little bit hard for us to grasp.
Does this make this book? If you wrote the lines in it,
yeah, some say if you put the lines in there, it makes it not be shamos. Others say it doesn't make a difference.
What do you say?
I mean, don't throw it out. If
No,
the
I
book
don't
wears,
plan on getting rid of
if
it.
any
I just
sefer, I
want-
say that any sefer that is a sefer of kedusha, no matter what language it's
No,
in,
but it's, yeah,
should be put in Geniza. Yeah,
It's
should.
not that I'm,
Right.
okay.
Right,
But
that-
like, so we shouldn't put it on the floor and stuff.
So once this so Kishimoshe Rabbeinu Sha'al Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hine Anochi Bo El Bnei Yisrael V'Marti Lahem Elokei Avosechem Shalcheni Aleichem V'Amru Li Ma Shemo. I'm going to say to the Bnei Israel, God sent me, and they're going to say to me, he's game planning this conversation. It's a very difficult conversation, and they're going to say, well, who sent you? What's the name of this God? Ma Omer Lehem, what will I tell them? Haisach Hashuva Tshuva Sakadosh Baruch Hu Ko Tomar Bnei Israel. Tell Bnei Israel. He says that I will be, right? Shalachani Alechem. That name Aleph Hey Yud Hey, one of Hashem's names, right? Sent me to you. Case Enchem Esugal Mitfos Inyan Shemosh Baruch Hu. To understand the height and the power of that name. Lam Yavo Yom. There will be a day. It will be in the future that you will be able to understand. That's the name of Hashem. That it's impossible for the human mind to comprehend it now, but that one day will come a time when you'll have that ability. So this sidebar has really been about understanding that God as the Adon of everything, the Baal Kochot can do everything, and that it's impossible. He's the source of existence of everything, but that we can't quite wrap our brains around it entirely. And after this, we'll finish this chapter. Next time we'll finish this chapter on Neirot Shabbat, on the candles of Shabbos.
it's almost like just that we can't wrap our brains around it, but we can see.
Right.